January 12, 1910. A bitter wind sweeps across the small town of Concord, Massachusetts. Snow clings to the eaves of clapboard houses, and the skeletal limbs of maples groan under the weight of frost. Inside each dwelling, kerosene lamps cast flickering shadows across walls, their weak glow marking the start of the day. Children stir under quilts, waiting for the crackle of firewood in the stove. Men trudge to barns or small workshops, carrying buckets of water drawn by hand from wells. Time is measured by the sun, the strike of the town clock, and the deliberate rhythms of labor. Across the nation, forces of change are gathering. Urban centers experiment with electric streetcars and arc lights. Yet most Americans, particularly in rural areas, continue life by human strength and natural light. By 1910, nearly 90% of farms lacked electricity. Households depended on mechanical innovations: hand-cranked washing machines, treadle sewing machines, water-driven mills. Candles, oil lamps, and coal or wood stoves provided both heat and illumination. In towns, general stores supplied kerosene, coal, and hardware essential for daily survival. Churches, town halls, and schoolhouses became centers of social life, lit only by lanterns and heated with wood stoves. Meals were planned with the seasons, and hunting, fishing, and canning were indispensable skills. Transportation reflected the limits of pre-electric life. Railroads carried goods and mail, but horse-drawn wagons remained essential for short trips. Roads outside towns were dirt paths, challenging to traverse in rain or snow. Daily labor was exacting. Men chopped wood and tended livestock. Women cooked, laundered, and cared for children, all by firelight and human effort. The preparation of meals required hours of work. Firewood had to be gathered, water heated, and stoves ignited. Laundry demanded washboards or treadle machines, while ironing relied on cast-iron devices heated on stoves. Evening activity was limited by light. Reading and sewing depended upon kerosene lamps. Extended work after sunset was rare and dictated by necessity rather than choice. American politics and infrastructure reflected a nation negotiating modernization. President Taft's administration oversaw industrial expansion and early electrification. Yet rural households were largely untouched, delayed by cost, distance, and technical challenges. Reports by the Department of Agriculture noted uneven electric service. Cities benefited from electric streetlights and wiring. Rural communities continued labor-intensive routines, highlighting social and economic disparities. Health and domestic work were shaped by necessity. Water was drawn by hand, and sanitation often depended on outhouses. Refrigeration was minimal, increasing the risk of illness and food spoilage. Americans adapted ingeniously. Ice harvesting in winter, root cellars for storage, and daylight-optimized home design were practical responses. Daily survival demanded skill, endurance, and careful planning. Education bore the mark of natural constraints. One-room schoolhouses served children of all ages, relying on daylight or lanterns. Attendance was influenced by agricultural labor, blending learning with work. Urban industrial growth contrasted sharply. Factories in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Detroit used electric motors and assembly lines. Artisans and small manufacturers in towns continued with hand tools, water wheels, or steam engines. Seasonality dictated daily routines. Winters constrained activity with long nights. Spring and summer offered long hours for field work. Lighting was scarce, and families measured time by tasks rather than hours. Communication remained slow. Letters carried personal, commercial, and civic messages. News of legislation, elections, or disaster arrived days after events occurred. Social life was structured by routine. Work, family, and faith dominated evenings after sunset. Communities relied on shared labor, maintaining cohesion despite isolation. Pressure for change grew. Engineers and utility companies highlighted economic potential. Industrial leaders like Edison and Westinghouse demonstrated electricity's feasibility. By 1915, small towns experimented with community lighting. Municipal grids expanded in industrial centers. Yet most Americans still lived by sunlight, muscle, and flame. World War I would accelerate electrification, but life before electricity remained predominant. Families carried on routines shaped by necessity. Human effort defined work, study, and domestic life. By 1920, Rural electrification programs were decades from completion. Cities illuminated streets and homes, while countryside dwellings remained dark. Americans relied on labor, skill, and community for daily life. Life before electricity was deliberate and disciplined. Time, labor, and ingenuity determined the boundaries of experience. Light was precious, work unceasing, and survival demanded attentiveness and cooperation. Beneath lanterns and the smoke of chimneys, Americans quietly prepared for transformation. Electricity would soon illuminate homes, streets, and industries. Yet before that light arrived, life moved by human pulse, sun, and fire, steady, measured, and profoundly enduring.